Thank you for joining me on this episode of Entrepreneur Encounters. Today, we're going to interview Jennifer Hensley, the founder of Playmaker Coaching and Consulting. Jennifer started her business because she identified a problem and decided there's an opportunity out there that she wants to go fix. Spoiler alert, she found a gap between what was being provided to entrepreneurs and business owners and what they really needed. Let's listen to what she has to say.
I help referral based business owners who are in early growth to eliminate that hassle and hustle for how they scale sustainably. I used to work for a large corporate company. I kind of grew up there. I created all these resources for most of my clients, but then I would see them struggling of like when they needed something, they couldn't find it or they weren't using it. I was feeling like sometimes I was pushing the corporate agenda of like, hey, you should do this versus what were my clients saying they were really struggling with and they needed. And, sometimes I was feeling like I was really providing them with all these ideas, but then I would see them getting stuck, not executing because they were small business owners too that were losing staff, or it was the end of their production year, or a personal family situation came up. And I felt like we were losing so much impact with these big plans that we would put in place and then not seeing them executed. So I knew there had to be a different way.
Well, how many of us have heard that before? Jennifer identified that what she was being asked to do in her corporate role, they had a service, they had a product, they had the thing that they felt like everyone was going to need. Except the truth is, it wasn't meeting anyone's needs. It was falling short in some way. And in this way, what it sounds like, it was overly comprehensive. And when they're done, it wasn't being implemented, it wasn't being put into use. This is one of the parts that tends to get entrepreneurs all over, whether we're talking about the products and services you're selling. Change is difficult, and most of us can't change in a lot of places at once. So if we're offering a product or service that's going to require someone to reorganize everything they do about their life, that's going to be pretty difficult. When you continue to listen to what Jennifer is going to have to say, she dials it down and figures out, how can I make it so that the result here is actually going to be sustainable and impactful? And that's the same thing I want you to look to at in your own small business. Are you trying to bite off more than your customer can chew? Because they're the ones who have to be able to implement and see the results. And when they don't, the answer is not, well, I gave you the 57-page report. I'm sorry you didn't read it. That's not going to make your customer happy. We've got to think about, how do you turn it into bite-sized pieces? So let's listen to what Jennifer says next.
I was sitting at my desk thinking, like, this does not seem like it makes sense. Am I talking a foreign language? Is it just me? So I knew there had to be a way to really right size their marketing for small business owners to drive more results for them and really give them the best of the best at a time that it made sense for them, and a systematic way to be consistent with their efforts so that referrals and phone calls isn't the only way for them to generate business. It's not the only answer of how they can navigate and grow, but it fits in all together with their plans for growth in their business. So that's why I created the Playmaker winning system. And now I feel like I'm just less frustrated. And I think they are too, that they have somebody working with them when they need it to get them the tools that they need at the right time. They have that playbook for success that we continue every 90 days to work with them on. What do you really need and how do we build it over time in a way that makes sense for you? And instead of having a good solution or just something else that they heard somebody else talk about, we make sure it's really the right solution for what their goals are. And they have somebody to help them get it over the finish line so they don't feel like they have to do it all on their own.
I love this. Did you catch how Jennifer is making sure to adapt everything that she's offering to what her clients' capabilities are going to be, giving them what they want, when they need it, the right amount of it, which is not too much, by the way. When we're in our zone of genius doing our thing and presenting our product or service, a lot of times to us, it feels super simple, but many times to our customers, it's not. And so Jennifer's creating a solution that's going to meet people where they're at. Such an essential piece. Does it mean that the end result of what she's going to do is all that different from what's going on in the corporation? When we focus on just the end result and we try and skip the process, that tends to be the place where a lot of things break down. It creates a lot of difficulties for us. So take notes on that and go back and re-listen to that section, because I love how she was just breaking it down to, I'm giving them when they want it. I'm giving them a format that's consistent, that's repeatable, that they are able to engage it in their method that they have. And they're going to have something to take away with them to be able to engage with later, to be able to refresh, review, and understand. I think those are all key points. And it's all too easy for us when we're in our excellence to skip over all those steps that for everyone else is super essential to be able to get to. So now Jennifer has identified a need. Let's listen to her. She talks about her motivation to actually make that leap and get into business for herself.
I felt like I was struggling with kind of being that generalist. I was working in all these different ways. I did sales, marketing, operations. I could kind of do the analytic and the creative side of things. So I felt comfortable, but I knew I wasn't fulfilled. So it was like, well, what do I really excel at? For me, a big part of the driver was every night I tell my daughter various different words before she goes to bed. And one of them is about living boldly and being curious. And I felt like I really wasn't demonstrating that. And, now she's 10. She was about 8 at the time. And I knew I was in that window of a time where it was like, I need to get out of my comfort zone and really demonstrate it's okay to take risks. It's okay not to know what's going to happen. So when the company I was working for went through a transformation, I was forced to really decide what I wanted for my future. What was the second half of my career journey? I knew there had to be something more. And that was when it was time to really align my passions with my actions and what I was doing. What I discovered was what my unique strength was really there all along. I just wasn't thinking about it in the right way. When I'm on the playing field, because I've always played sports, the thing I did on the playing field was the same thing that I was doing in the corporate environment. Being that playmaker, finding unique ways to advance the ball, creating those scoring opportunities, helping my teammates stay in the position that they do well. Where do they best spend their time? And allowing them to score and score more often. That's what I love doing. And I realized like, I'm not really the generalist. I'm that quarterback or that playmaker for them that ensures it all gets done and it all connects together in a meaningful way. And instead of feeling like I'm stuck, I'm more excited than ever. It's certainly challenging and uncomfortable every single day. Having my daughter and trying to be an example for her continue to motivate me to see what I'm capable of.
That's super special. One of the gifts of having kids, particularly when they're younger, is we have to simplify concepts. We're not dumbing them down. Usually we're taking out some of the jargon and garbage that we have in our own heads and like, what's at the core of this explanation? As Jennifer was searching what she wanted to inspire and model for her own daughter, she decided she wasn't carrying that out. She wasn't taking the adventurous side of her and putting out the pieces that she knew she was capable of doing. So that's awesome how oftentimes our kids can inspire us to change and get better. And so she launched down that road. And I think that is one of the keys that's important to remember. When times get tough, we need to go back to our motivation and understand what is it that got us in this in the first place? Does it still anchor us? Does it still propel us? Does it still give us the energy? And is it the right path to go forward? So with this insight in mind, Jennifer goes back and reflects, what is she doing today in her job, in her corporate job? And she discovers that she's being the playmaker on the field. She's directing traffic. She's making the decisions that need to be made. And she starts figuring out how is she going to transition that into a concept that fits what we talked about earlier, that's actually delivering what the customers need when they need it in the amounts that they're able to process it. And she starts developing her Playmaker system that's going to make a huge impact for the customers that she serves. So she's got her ideas ready to go, but now she wisely goes out and seeks what other people have already done on the field before her.
So I kind of made the mistake that I hadn't done a lot of networking outside of the company over the years and what was in the community and what other opportunities were available. So my first step when I was kind of looking through what's next, I did do some looking about networking with people in the community to understand like what's out here. Maybe there is a corporate job that's the right fit. And what I found was like nothing really particularly excited me or felt like it was the right for what my skill set was and what I wanted to do moving forward. So I didn't have any clients that I had like, or potential clients where I had a list of like, hey, here's who I could work with. But what I did have was I knew that I had some credibility from my previous work experience. I think did a really good job. I knew I could go back to people from that field that I knew to give me advice and give me insights on okay, how do I get started? It kind of started to build some momentum over time from there. And I think the biggest thing to get started was really just picking up the phone, doing the activity, even when it wasn't perfect or it was very uncomfortable. It was the one thing that I really had control over. And even now, I still make it a point every week. It's like, okay, I need to do my 5. I got to do my 5 reach outs. And most of the time, I'm pretty good with that. I found that like knowing that I have that goal of like getting 5, I always make sure that that happens.
I love how Jennifer knew that she was doing a great job in her current role, gave her the confidence to go out and connect with other people and find out what are some of the ways that she could deploy her skills? I want to touch on something she said about networking. We all tend to focus on building relationships in the areas where we're currently involved in our jobs, in our hobbies, in those things. I don't think that's a mistake. Just recognize that as you continue to expand the field, your field of view of what you're going to do, there may be other places that you need to get in and start building some relationships in, that you need to know what other people are doing. And you need to learn to be a giver and support in those areas that you can then get the return support that's going to come back to you. So I encourage everyone to start with the network that you have, whatever you have developed. And there's no wrong place to start with. And everyone has something of a network to start with because you have some relationships that you have formed. But know that you're going to have to form some other ones. Even when you're in the middle of business, you may do a pivot and decide, oh, I never really thought about this particular line of business. Maybe I'm going to go that route. Well, that may mean you have to do a whole new set of networking. It's something I've had to do in my business. When I made what I thought was just a small change in how I was going to go to market for the customers, it was actually a complete different set of support systems and a complete different set of customers and where to find them. And it was as if we were starting over. Yes, I had some connections. Yes, I had some awareness, but I had to build new relationships up. So definitely be ready for that because that's a super essential part of what we're going to do. Then Jennifer touched on something I think is incumbent on all of us to really think about and decide. For many of us, there's something we know we have to do and we just do not want to do it. She said she knows she has to do her 5. We will do everything else. There's all sorts of psychological reasons behind that and names behind it. But in the end, we've got to come up with a system for ourselves to make sure we do the things that matter. Is it making sales calls? Is it getting your administrative work done so that you're clear to be able to do what you need to do? Is it setting up your calendar? Is it actually doing sometimes the work? Maybe there are portions of the work you love and other portions of what you did that you don't like doing. You have to come up with a system that's going to work for you because there's a bare minimum essential that you know you have to do to succeed. So you got to come up with a system. And let me put one more piece on you. Stop comparing yourself to everyone else. Stop comparing yourself with ridiculously unrealistic examples. We like to pick the 0.00001% top performer in the entire universe and then be like, oh man, I can't be like him. Well, guess what? None of us would ever try a sport, pick up a hobby, or do anything new if all we said was, unless I can be like the very top person in the universe, I'm not doing it. Set a bar that you can actually hit. I'm not a fan of all the time, everything has to be a stretch goal. Put a stretch goal in a place where you excel and where you're amazing and you're going to be fired up and you say, darn it, next week, I'm getting that done because honestly, you're usually already pretty good in that area and you're going to succeed. But in the areas where you struggle, pick a low bar. If it's 1, then make it 1. And don't should on yourself and say, man, at this point in my life, I'm this number of years old and I have this type of education and all these skills and I used to do whatever and I should be able to stop. Hit a goal, set a goal that you can hit and then hit it. And once you're hitting it, build on that confidence, celebrate with someone else, give them a call. Hey, hit my goals this week. Did all the things I wanted to do. Start getting some positivity and then raise the goal. But find your number. For Jennifer, it was 5. For you, you got to find out what your item is, put a target on it, and then find a way to go get it done. There's lots of methods, but you absolutely have to pick one. This is a space that a Milwaukee Small Business Coach we see all the time in the hundreds of entrepreneurs we've worked with. If you are struggling to get over the inertia, figure out what it takes to do the next step to get the things done you know you need to do reach out to us. Find us on mkebusinesscoach.com and let us see how we can help support your business because this is a super common spot and many entrepreneurs just stay stuck there. And we're in the business of stopping people spinning your wheels so you can turn your hard work into hard cash. So let's continue on talking with Jennifer and highlight how her business model changes as life goes on.
Early on, I actually thought I wasn't going to do the execution. I was going to stay on the coaching side of it and be like, okay, here's the ideas. Now you run and implement it. And just found more and more people were like, but I need somebody to help me get this done. So many of the clients I work with, I mean, they're just really busy. They don't have much time. And often they're not the greatest at executing these types of activities that they kept asking me, say, hey, can you execute for me? So that pulled me into that space initially. I was like, oh, I'll test this out. I kept trying to remind myself of that, of like, just go with it and let's see and let's keep building it as I go and learning. And that was one of the biggest things. Yeah, was starting to do the execution. And that has become more and more an important part of what I do for my clients is just taking it off their plate.
All right. So as Jennifer goes out and starts doing her business, she discovers there's yet another opportunity. Remember why she started. She knew there was a need that wasn't being met properly and there was a gap. Well, she starts identifying the gap, that there was more than just training and coaching that was needed. There were people who actually wanted execution. So she had to come off the coaching bench and take her position on the field as a key player to start doing some of the execution. And it evolved her business to help understand there are different ways that she can be involved to help you move forward, because there are different stages that her business customers were at to be able to succeed. We all need to take a look and figure out, what do we need to tweak? What do we need to change? Many times the reason we're not getting adoption or as fast of a uptake in sales and revenue as we want to see is because we haven't figured out how to make that one little change. Customers are essentially saying in their head, if only you did this, then that would be a perfect offering. Our job, our goal is to get out there, talk to people, and figure out how to draw that out of people and then validate if it's true. Customers will tell you all sorts of things. They're very rarely actually right with what's going on in their own heads because we're driven by strange motivations. But test it out, because a little shift like Jennifer's talking about could have made a huge, huge difference in where we're going. So shifting gears just a little bit, we've all got schedules that sometimes get crazy when we're small business owners. We have to find some time to be able to recharge. Let's listen to Jennifer as she talks about who she surrounds herself with that are supportive and how she puts energy back in the system.
One of the things is I look at my schedule and say, I can't go all day long with meetings with clients. Even if I love those discussions, I know I've got to have time to recharge and time just for myself. So I do try to build that into my calendar of like, when am I going to have client meetings and when do I have time just to work or to think and stuff as part of that. And then certainly my family have been huge supporters of me. They've given me plenty of room of like, hey, if this is what you want to do, we're 100% behind you. We believe in you. We know you're going to figure it out. They've never had a doubt, which has been fantastic to have that kind of support. And the expectations we have of ourselves. Sometimes you're like, okay, I feel like I need to be this far along in my first year or something. And having those people too to say like, you're doing fantastic. Remember, you are only a year in. That really help you kind of take a deep breath sometimes.
Well, that's fantastic. Jennifer recognizes that we can't do it all ourselves. We have to figure out our pacing, even in the middle of work. Can you handle coaching person after person after person, or do you need to put a break in there? We all have our own rhythms. You got to identify yours and then take action and be sincere about it. Because when we're run down and we're drained, it will not only affect us in the short term, but it'll start to wear on us and steal our joy. Just remember, this is not a solo sport. It's the whole reason I started Entrepreneur Encounters. We need to be able to meet and encounter other entrepreneurs who are along the journey just a little bit further than we are, so that we can learn from their successes and their stories how to grow our own journey on our path towards success. Well, as I just mentioned, I can't do this alone. I have lots of people who help me out along the way. A couple I want to highlight here. The first is Kate Hapwasson, who does all the editing work to be able to put our podcasts and productions together for you to be able to see and hear. The next is Chris Crean, who does the music for both our intro and our outro. If you like what you hear here today, there's more information you can go find. You can go to our website, mkebusinesscoach.com/insights, and check out some of our blogs and other articles and information that we have for your use. So again, thank you for joining me on this episode of Entrepreneur Encounters. I'm Brent Hapwasson, Milwaukee Small Business Coach, and I want to invite Chris to take us out.
Ready to take